Good afternoon, my friends. The doctor is in the house. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of To Your Health with Dr. G. On this Wednesday, we're going to just have a lot of fun. My name is Dr. Mark Gomez. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician working at an Edward Hospital in Naperville and Bolingbrook, Illinois. Welcome back, everybody, to my 25th episode. I cannot believe it. What once was a dream is now reality, and I've just been so happy to bring amazing content to my listeners out there, and really at the end of the day, making sure that we have all the tools to be successful with our health. And as we know, when you have success in your health, you can have success in your life. That's deep, isn't it?
It's deep.
It's deep. All right. Well, again, welcome back to the show. Today's show is entitled Food Allergies 101. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Gomez. Check me out on my website, www.drmarkgomez.com. Check me out on my handles on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at To Your Health, Dr. G. So, when I was coming up with this show today, I knew I had to have a certain guest. And those of you that have seen us before, and those of you that are new to the show, I'm so excited to have her on the show today. But we did a show back in the summer. We talked about allergies in the summertime, and we had a great show. And then when I was putting this show together for food allergies, I go, okay, I gotta have my good friend Dr. Juanita Mora on the show. So I just knew it had to happen. So we're gonna make it. We made that connection, and I'm gonna introduce you guys to her in a bit. For those of you that are new to the show, what we do on each week is I break down a health topic with my expert clinician to help us really kind of break down any barriers. We're going to talk about a lot of different things because food allergies, this theme is so important to us. It affects so many of us. And a lot of the general public does not realize this. So we're going to talk about how prevalent it is. We're going to talk about the burdens that it may have. And certainly, what can we do as caregivers? What can we do as parents? What can we do as educators? What can we do as community leaders and just citizens of planet Earth? Why not? But what can we do as a community to make this burden less of an issue so that everybody can have good health at the end of the day? But before we get into that kind of stuff and I introduce my guests, I want to hit you guys with a quick disclaimer. So here we go. The content of To Your Health with Dr. G is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and that the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, and or treatment. Further details can be found at www.toyourhealthwithdrg.com/disclaimer. So before I introduce Dr. Mora to you guys, I want to hit you guys with a couple quick stats. And here's the deal. Because food allergies is real. And really the theme that we're talking about today is how can food, which we need to survive and live, cause damage to us? And that's the quintessential issue that we're talking about today. And so we're going to break this down a little bit more, but let me hit you with a couple quick stats. Approximately 15 million people in the United States have food allergies. Now, that was a bigger number than I thought before I was researching everything for this topic. And when you break it down, a lot of times when we think about kids, but adults have it too. So 6 million kids roughly and about 9 million adults. We're going to get into some more of the stats in a little bit, but food allergies is real. And so we're going to talk about practical approaches today and really what can we do to make this issue more talked about, because we have to talk about health. You know, we're going to talk about moving the needle with health on any kind of topic, whether it's food allergies or diabetes or anything like that. You got to have a conversation about it. So that's what we're going to be doing today and talking about health and well-being in this relation. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today. I'm so excited to have you on the show again. So she is now a veteran of To Your Health with Dr. G. And there's going to be more content, there's no doubt, because I'm going to be tapping Dr. Mora to make sure she comes on the show on more occasions. But I just consider her a friend. Obviously, she's an expert. And so I want to introduce to you guys Dr. Juanita Mora. She's a double board certified internal medicine and pediatric physician, as well as certified in allergy and immunology. You can check her out at www.thechicagoallergycenter.com. Dr. Mora, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hola.
Hola.
All right. I'm so excited because this is your bread and butter. And again, when we were coming with this idea and I reached out to you and I go, all right, we're going to do this. And you were like, yes, we're going to do this. And we're going to take this to the next level because we want so many people to know and understand about this. So I want to ask you this. I want you to start off by just telling us a little bit about your background. Where did you do your medical training? Where did you go to medical school? Where did you do your residency? Just give us a little bit of your credentials.
Sure. So I've been a Chicago girl all my life, born and raised in Pilsen, predominantly Mexican neighborhood in Chicago. I went to College, University of Chicago, med school at UIC in Chicago too. And I did internal medicine and pediatrics residency at Rush and Allergy and Immunology Fellowship at Rush here in Chicago. So I haven't left and I'm here to stay.
Wow. It's so funny because we think about, on a side note, like physicians, you go from one place, you say, I'm going to go to this school, I'm going to go to that school, I want to go there. You stayed true to your roots.
Yes.
That is so awesome. And you're still here doing it in your medical practice. But also, a lot of people don't know, you are now the national spokeswoman for the American Lung Association. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. See, I see. Again, this is awesome.
They let a Latina in. We're in trouble.
Oh, it's going to change for the better. I love
you.
that inclusiveness because that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to talk about allergies today. Food allergies, not other allergies, just food. Things that I like to eat. We all like to eat food, but we're going to talk about food allergies in particular. So why don't I give you this? Why don't we start by just saying, give me like just a general day in the life of Dr. Mora in her practice dealing with food allergies.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we're doing this show because one of the things we want to do is raise food allergy awareness. So when we're talking about food allergy coming into the office, sometimes it's a little newborn baby who might be a month old or 2 month old presenting with a really bad case of atopic dermatitis or eczema, and mommy's been breastfeeding. And she's worried that something she's eating is actually causing the really bad eczema in the baby. So the baby at that point can get actually tested for food allergies and determine if it's something that mommy's introducing in the breast milk that's really exacerbating the atopic dermatitis as well too. Other kids present basically in clinic with, this is the first time we introduce peanut, or, grandma gave him a few cashews and he developed hives, lip swelling, eye swelling, and then complained that he couldn't breathe or started completely throwing up. So then it's really diagnosing. It's also giving them an emergency food allergy action plan. And it's all about just what you said, empowering them with education so that everyone at large, and that's one of our goals today, is to educate the public on what to do in case of a food allergy reaction as well.
Excellent. And I think, go back and hear those numbers that I said at the beginning, 9 million adults, 6 million children. Those are some very impactful numbers. When you look at even the impact of the disease burden itself, it's in the billions of dollars each year in this country.
$25 billion spent on food allergy resources every single year.
So let's break this down. I wanna break down. Let's take it down to 101. And why don't can you just tell the audience what is a food allergy? Let's break it down.
Excellent. So let's talk food allergy. So what is a food allergy? It's when basically the body's immune system starts rejecting that specific food, so mounting an actual specific response to it. And the way I explain it to parents or even adult patients who first walk in and they tell me, I've eaten shrimp all my life and suddenly I have this reaction where I break out into hives or lip swelling every time I eat shrimp now. So I tell them something in your body's immune system changed where it's rejecting it. And your body is very smart, it's very in tune. And when it mounts an allergic response against the food, when it's IgE mediated, it creates hives. Angioedema or lip swelling, eye swelling, vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath, wheezing, throat closing. Those are the IgE mediated or allergic response to an actual food. So it's your body's way of rejecting the food and telling you that it's not tolerating it.
And I always say you don't want to be that person where something bad happens, because you're describing symptoms that can be life-threatening. And it's interesting because when I see patients from an adult side, because I only see adults in my practice, I'll get some of that kind of same story. They'll have some of those symptoms. They'll have the hives. They'll have the swelling, the lip swelling especially. Sometimes maybe getting a little bit of a shortness of breath. And they say, what's going on? The hardest part for me is to break down to patients and say, hey, yes, you've been doing this all your life, but now your body has launched a response.
Exactly, and one of the ways I explain it to them, it's suddenly for adult onset food allergy, it's basically something that you've eaten all your life, and suddenly something changes in your immune system where your body no longer tolerates. Can that tolerance come back? Possibly, but that's why once a year you would get food skin tested and blood tested as well too, so that way we can determine. But in the meantime, no more popping Benadryl or Allegra or Zyrtec and trying to eat the food. That is not the right thing to do. The right thing is avoidance and having an EpiPen or AviQ always with you.
Oh my gosh, I mean, you hit the head on the nail, because you're right. It's so easy for people to say, hey, I want to do Benadryl or one of those products, an antihistamine, and you're like, no, you need, if there's something happening, you need something that works in minutes, even faster than that, because you only have maybe minutes to prevent something that's very serious.
Correct. And we have a lot of parents who have become great advocates whose kids unfortunately did not survive a bad allergic reaction. And one of the big cases that comes to mind is the Red Sneakers Foundation, which is for a little boy in Florida who had a really a bad reaction to tree nuts, and his parents didn't recognize that they should give epinephrine early and gave Benadryl, continued to have symptoms, went into anaphylaxis, which is a life-threatening reaction completely. His brain shut down, body completely shut down, and he wound up passing away. So now the parents are big advocates in raising food allergy awareness, and I can't say it more, like we need to get the word out. Using epinephrine in a life-threatening allergic reaction or even a mild reaction, now I tell parents, if in doubt, give it. You'll never be wrong for giving it, because it's better to be safe rather than sorry.
The phrase I like to use in my practice is, there's no crying wolf when it comes to your health. And
Correct.
so when in doubt, you just give it.
Mm-hmm.
And just give it. I mean, you can't stress the importance of that. Just give it. Now, let me ask you this: is it more so that our body is responding to any particular proteins within the food itself when you get the food allergy? Is that really kind of the underlying issue that's going on?
Correct. So it's basically, it's reacting to a specific food protein. So in peanut now, in blood testing, we can break down to the components the actual proteins of peanut that put kids or adults at risk for a higher chance of anaphylaxis. So yes, it's your body reacting to that protein and mounting this response. And one big question I always get, well, I always break it into hives, so I don't have to carry EpiPen. I only get lip swelling, so I don't have to carry EpiPen. My child doesn't have that life-threatening allergy. All you have to do is give him Benadryl, right? And I said, no. So what the studies have shown is we can never predict what a second or a third allergic reaction can be. So EpiPen should always be carried, especially in a 2-pack. So the AviQ or the EpiPen. And then they should always carry Benadryl. But I said first thing is give EpiPen, and then you can get Benadryl as well too. But first thing is treat the reaction as fast as you can.
There was some recent, obviously, it's been in the news last year about the extraordinary price out there for EpiPen, and then when they came out with the manufacturer that came with a generic product, and the price was still excessively high. What are we doing these days to try to really combat the cost? Are there other foundations out there? Are there groups that are out there that are trying to lower the cost so people can have access to this life-saving medicine?
Sure. So one of the generics just was FDA approved, which is made by Teva, which is going to be a cheaper alternative coming out. They just haven't stocked the pharmacies yet, so that's going to be one alternative. AviQ, which is the injectable talking actual auto-injectable epinephrine, is currently on the market, and for commercial insured patients, they have a $0 copay card. And for kids or adults on Medicaid, they actually have a foundation in which they'll provide free drug. That is something that the company is actually doing. So, which we thank them for, obviously, as well, too.
Yeah, we've got to get the word out there that there's some resources out there, because you can imagine if you're maybe in an underserved community, and we've seen the rise of food allergies in the African American, Hispanic communities compared to the Caucasian community over the last couple of decades. We're talking about now people that may not be having the access, but now we're trying to find ways to get them access to those resources.
Absolutely, especially because we had an EpiPen shortage that's still going on in the United States. because there was not enough stock in there, and we had kids who needed the new EpiPens for the school year, just so many issues, and we were scrambling for resources for them to have this life-saving drug. We decided to even extend expiration dates just so everyone could be saved. Absolutely.
Wow, wow. Now let me ask you this question, Dr. Mora. When you see the impact of this, and because you're talking about the fact that food allergies can kill. Obviously, we would probably say more often they don't, but when you see that devastation, you see people that are now trying to raise awareness because they've lost a loved one, how does that keep you just motivated to keep spreading the message from a physician's end?
So honestly, these parents, especially who have lost a loved one, really motivate me as a physician, and I think they motivate all of us because their love is so strong that they want their child's death to prevent the death of others, which is really admirable. So one thing it really is a key, I think, when I read all these stories is, one, it pushes us to try to save more people, to raise that awareness, to say, you know what, epinephrine has to be given early, and it doesn't matter if you think it's just a mild reaction, we need to act early. The other thing that I think needs to get out into the public is we always tell people to carry in 2-packs because sometimes, they're going to be out in a rural area or they're camping and they're not close to an emergency department or a hospital, so where they could be treated. So in case of an allergic reaction, I hope the public is really listening. One, you want to give one, and within 5 minutes, if there's any worsening signs or symptoms, you give a second epinephrine injection. And you don't give it in the same site. So if you gave it in the right leg, you give it now in the left leg in case there's actual blood obstruction. So that way you de-obstruct that area as well too. So that's one important thing I wanted to get through, like you use a different site, not the same actual leg.
No, it's very interesting because actually I don't think I was trained that way to use different sites. So it's very interesting, and it makes perfect sense to do that. You want to get maximal use and absorption of that medicine.
Of that epinephrine, absolutely, into the bloodstream, and that's why you're using 2 sites.
Wow.
Yes.
So when I was doing some of the research, I guess doing some research for the show, I found that like the first kind of food allergies, at least in modern, we'll call it modern medicine, described a little bit over 100 years ago. But we've seen this just this boom. I mean, I think like when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, you're sharing lunchboxes all the time, like trading things, I have my Goonies lunchbox, I have a Star Wars lunchbox. We're trading stuff, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all the time. And now, that's not even happening at the school level. So what happened? How do we get from like what seemed like no food allergies back even 30, 40 years ago? And there were allergies, but it just seemed like there wasn't. And now we have this just heightened awareness. Yeah. What's going on? Or do we know why this is happening?
So when we talk about the statistics, there's 2 kids per classroom that now have food allergies. And in adults, we're talking about actually, when we look at Soldier Field Stadium, one whole section of adults would have food allergy. So what has changed in the last few years that has predisposed? So we know genetics plays a role. So if a mom or dad runs in a family to have food allergy, there's going to be a higher risk in the child for food allergy. So that's one thing that plays into effect. The second thing is basically the environment. So we have less people who previously were living in farms, so now we have more pollution going on in the city. This is why we're fighting for Clean Air Act here in the United States and everything else too. We have more actual processed foods as well too. So now your mom and my mom didn't say, okay, microwave your meal and that's your meal for the day. We didn't have microwaves around at all.
No, we did not.
No, so everything was homemade, fresh food, everything else too, and suddenly, so all these chemicals are changing what's called the microbiome in the actual gut. So the microbiome is basically the gut bacteria that allows for tolerance. So what changes it? So from the studies now we know certain things actually predispose kids or adults to have food allergies. One is if a mommy receives antibiotics when she's pregnant. And that basically will alter the gut bacteria in that baby because it not only wipes out the bad bacteria, but also the good bacteria for the tolerance. If the baby has trouble upon birth and receives antibiotics, then that baby's also going to actually have a higher risk of food allergy. The other thing is, for example, if the baby's born via C-section versus vaginal delivery, because again, they're not exposed to the good maternal vaginal bacteria that's needed for immune development. And then the fourth thing is, a dog predisposing the actual birth of a baby at home decreases the risk of food allergies and environmental allergies, etc., because they bring outside bacteria in. A cat increases risk.
So a cat increases risk, meow, and a dog, Fluffy, decreases risk. I did not know that. So that's awesome. And now I might have to make a compelling argument to my wife now that we need to get a dog.
That's right.
So we'll see how that works. No, she's not going to like that I said that, but that's all right. Well, this is just fascinating stuff because, again, we're talking about the impact. And at the end of the day, we want anybody that suffers from food allergies to live a life that's free of fear from eating. And we want help. We don't want that fear. We want them to be fulfilled and fearless. And so we have a lot of work to do. Now it's interesting. As I do some more research here, I found some data and this is from the Food Allergy Research and Education out of Virginia. And it was interesting when they said more than 170 foods have been reported to cause reactions in the United States, but 8 major food allergens exist: milk, egg, peanut, tree nuts, wheat, soy, fish, and crustacean shellfish. And they're responsible for the most serious food allergy reactions in this country. First of all, when you look at those big groups, those major groups, I mean, a lot of people eat that kind of stuff, but I did not know the list of foods was so high. And just talks about, hey, we need to do some more research on this. So let me ask you this. Say somebody goes to a restaurant. What do they do? I mean, how do you advise your patients? They go to a restaurant or it's a birthday party. What do we tell them?
So one of the things is basically, one, to not be afraid to say I'm allergic to maybe peanuts and tree nuts. And, can we make sure, please, that, what dishes are safe for me? And then to talk to the chef as well, too. So that way, their meal is prepared separately. So, for example, if they go to an actual stir-fry place where they're stir-frying my dish with shellfish and peanuts and nuts, and then they're going to use the same pan for that person, they need to know that they need to wash it and everything else. And like here in Chicago, we have some good restaurants that are actually very food allergy friendly. And, I think that's one thing. We need to get more restaurants to be food allergy friendly and to be able to discuss, what are the allergens and, how can we create a safe environment. There's a pizza place actually here in Naperville that allows kids to make their pizza and in a food allergy friendly environment where they only use actual ingredients that they're not allergic to, which is kind of cool.
I think that's awesome because it gives those kids a chance to be kids.
Right.
What kid doesn't like pizza? You don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to eat something and then you get a reaction. That's great.
I tell them also to wash out definitely when, for example, they're at a salad bar and they grab salad dressing with the same scooper, or they're actually, because there can be a lot of cross-contamination. I always tell them if they go to an ice cream place to please ask for a new scooper to be used for them to scoop out any ice cream, for example, that doesn't contain nuts, because a lot of the times it's teenagers who are working the actual ice cream little shop and they are scooping my peanut butter ice cream and then scooping your chocolate ice cream with the same scooper that they maybe dipped in water, and that's it.
Yeah. By the way, that combination sounds really good to me. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's like a 2-second, not even 2-second dip. But you would say a completely different scooper. Say they were to wash it. Would you just advise just soap and water if they're going to wash it, and then if they have to reuse like a scooper or a utensil or something like that?
So definitely, you want to do soap and water and rinse well with hot water. That way,
okay.
Absolutely.
Wow. Now you got me thinking about ice cream, by the way. So let me ask you this question. I get this all the time in my internal medicine practice, because I'll have some parents or some adults that come in and say, okay, I had food allergies when I was a kid. They had specific type foods that they've been faithfully avoiding for a long time as much as they can. But they always ask me the question, can I ever grow out of my food allergies, when you get that kind of question asked to you in an older person, what's the answer to that?
Absolutely, it can. So some people have been taught to avoid foods their whole life, and then they never got reevaluated. So they've been avoiding egg or milk their whole life. When egg, milk, soy, and wheat are some of the most easily outgrown, and 85% will be outgrown by age 5. But yet, now they're 25 and they've completely been avoiding, and maybe you've had some slip up and they're like, well, I've been okay, doctor. So that's a time to reevaluate. Definitely do skin tests and blood tests. But even in my adults, I'll say, well, let's reevaluate with the skin test and blood test. If that comes back negative, then you come and eat that food right here in the office, and we watch you and make sure it's nice and safe too.
I like how you encourage people to come to your office, and that's probably something I could probably do better in my practice. Although if they're going to bring something, I want them to bring me something too, because I might be hungry. So yeah, give me a little food. But that makes perfect sense, because you want to do it in that setting. It's directly supervised, and if you needed to observe, if say somebody was going to have a reaction, you can give their medicine EpiPen right there and there.
Correct, absolutely. And they start with a really tiny dose, and every 15 minutes get a bigger dose. So by the time, you release them to that food allergy.
Excellent. And you've had a great meal, hopefully.
That's right.
All right, I don't ask you this question. Here we go. Is there any, you're talking about some of the testing that's out there, blood versus skin. What's your mindset? Because it's interesting, because people ask me that, and I don't do a lot of testing in my practice, I'll be honest, because I'll probably refer out at that point if I'm suspecting somebody. But there's people that, the traditional allergists would use a lot of skin stuff, then some of these blood tests came out that were a little more sophisticated. But it seems like you have a lot of different tools to choose from in your utility belt.
Correct. So definitely, so your skin test is going to be more sensitive, which means that if it's positive, you're more in tune to trust it. So it's going to be actually a good thing. And then the blood test is more specific. So if it's negative on actual blood tests, you can trust it as well too. So now that you're right, that the blood tests have become more sophisticated, you can actually follow it together. So for example, you can do the skin test for egg and all the most common foods and have answers within 20 minutes. So that's really beautiful, because if they are positive, it'll turn like a little mosquito bite. Very small chance of actual anaphylaxis or any reaction that can occur due to a skin test, which is really great. And then you use your actual blood test to see if they're outgrowing it. So once your skin test might be negative, or if the parents really are suspecting that maybe it's the pollen cross-reactivity and not really, because a lot of the tree nuts cross-react with the pollen because they grow from trees, then you can actually go into the actual component testing for the tree nuts and see if it's really pollen cross-reactivity or really an allergy to the nut, which is really cool testing now.
I think it's really cool.
And it also allows you, for example, in egg or milk, to determine which little kid might be a good candidate for baked milk or baked egg as well too. So, and then who's outgrowing it, because once the blood test comes back negative and the skin test also is negative, then you can consider oral challenge. And you have 2 data points. That's what I always tell people. That allows us to have 2 data points into your life. So that's really cool to have.
What are your thoughts about just what else we can be doing? I think talking about you and I are here trying to spread a message to people out there to get them engaged, to have these conversations with their healthcare provider, with their physician. But also this message is very broad too, because we're talking to the educators out there, the schools, the communities. How do we get everybody just to get on the same page? Sometimes when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you don't really move the needle. But we're trying to make sure that we do it in a very kind of integrative and a connected way. How do we best kind of bridge any gaps? Parent groups might be saying one thing, physicians might be saying another thing, public health officials might be saying another thing. How do we just kind of make sure we're staying on the same message?
So I think one of the ways is really working together. So bringing these groups and kind of sending one message. So I go to a lot of schools and then train the teachers and then talk to the students about food allergy as well too. So that way, 1, you raise social awareness. 2, the teachers aren't afraid to act in case they have to give epinephrine. Because a lot of the times they're like, well, Dr. Mora, how do you expect me to be a doctor? And I said, no, I don't expect you to be a doctor. All I want you to know how to do is recognize if a child or an adult is having a reaction then just give it. And then call 911 and then the rest can happen. So that way they don't feel like they need to, well, it was only hives, so maybe I shouldn't do anything. Rather, just act on it. So that's the first thing I tell them. Act on it, call 911, and one big line I always tell them is, you'll never be wrong for giving it.
Yeah.
And it's life-saving. So that's the big message that you want to get across. 2, you want to tell the students what can happen, that food allergy is serious and that it can kill someone, because food allergy kids are more likely to be bullied and have social anxiety than other kids as well too. There's many kids who actually get threatened with the food that they're allergic to. They get chased in recess, or there's actually been cases like in college where one student was tased with peanut butter completely, and unfortunately he had an anaphylactic reaction and didn't make it. So there's a lot of actual social awareness that we need to do together.
Yeah, the data, I mean, you just hit it home hard on that one, because when I was doing some research in anticipation of this, yeah, the data on bullying is huge. 1 in 3 children with food allergies reports being bullied as a result of that condition, and that's horrible. It means it's a horrible thing, and we already talked about, we could do a whole nother show on like bullying and everything, some of the mental health aspects on that one, but this is legit because you're talking about people's lives at this point. You know, it's interesting, I think about going back to some of the kids stuff, and we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the disparities that are out there. We're seeing a rise in the African American and Latino communities. Are there any other kind of factors that are driving the rise of food allergies in those particular communities versus a Caucasian community?
So one, there's going to be definitely, one is the living conditions, more pollution as well too. The other thing is an increase in rise of that atopic march, or what's called the hygiene hypothesis, which is basically that they are not playing as much in parks or anything else. Suddenly there's PlayStations, there's phones, there are iPads, but we need to expose little ones to the dirt early on. So that way their immune development occurs and everything else too. When we talk African Americans, Hispanics, etc., parents are now busier, and this goes for every nationality, I guess.
Busy, yeah.
And so they're not going outside as much. They're not exposing them to everything. Vitamin D, especially too. Vitamin D is important in sunlight. And getting these kids, we know that vitamin D actually decreases the chance of food allergy, everything else too. So getting them dirt, giving them vitamin D as well too, the sun.
Let kids play.
Let kids play, absolutely.
Yeah.
Get their immune system. And then the other one is, so it's the D's. So 1 is dirt, 2 is vitamin D, 3, diverse diet early on. So because now the studies are actually showing we want early introduction of high allergy foods in kids with low risk. So if a child doesn't have actual bad eczema and there's no family history of food allergy, at 4 months of age, when solids are introduced, the new recommendations are that peanuts should start being introduced. Tree nuts, fish, shellfish, completely. So it's just like your mom and my mom did when we were little. We were introduced to egg very early on. What happened is that we noticed that when we were telling actual pediatricians to tell parents to not introduce the high allergy foods till 3 years of age so that kids could tell us if they were having symptoms, we saw a huge rise in food allergy because they were delaying the introduction of actual foods. So now we're going back to before and actually telling them introduce it early. And for those kids at high risk for actual food allergy, then skin test them first, and if they're negative, then they go ahead and start introducing these foods.
Excellent. What are you seeing from from a youth engagement kind of perspective? Because I always talk about like the next generation of leaders. I mean, kids that have gone through food allergy, that know they have it, giving back. Are you seeing some of that kind of involvement maybe at the high school level of kids trying to educate other kids? Because I think sometimes I don't consider me or you old farts by far at all. We still got our swag, we still got our youth, our relative youth. But sometimes as you get a little bit older, you may not be able to basically understand they might not relate, you might not be relatable to some of those younger kids. So do you ever see any kind of stories, or you hear any things of maybe it's like the big brother that's in high school who may have food allergies and he talks to some other kids or anything like that?
Absolutely. So you see it in high schools a lot, which is really great. And even at the college level too. Just educating on food allergy and becoming leaders in that way as well too. And because sometimes in high schools they still have the peanut and tree nut free tables as well too. So having them show them around, show them that it's okay, and then also talking in an auditorium style, like during pep rallies and everything else too, on the importance of recognizing food allergy. And actually one actual student I heard talk that really drove me said, I am not different because I have a food allergy. I am the same as you, except that, these foods can make me really sick. So I need you to help me, and I need you to help other students if they get sick. So I need you to know what to do. And he taught them what to do, which I thought was, what a great kid, really.
Yeah, what a great kid. What an engaged person. And we need some of the engagement of everybody out there to make this issue much more understandable and something that we can talk about practical solutions. So speaking of solutions, I want to ask you a couple of questions about some new things that are out there, because I always first of all, I like the fact that we're using social media to kind of get the message out there, because this is how we reach the masses.
Absolutely.
So we've got to keep doing it, and I encourage anybody out there that's listening to the show, like literally share this on your Facebook, share this on Twitter, share this wherever to get the word out, because we have to do this together to make things right, to move the needle, to continue this discussion, because this discussion has to happen. We have to be comfortable talking about it, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so and that's really that empowerment aspect. And again, we want our patients to be just as empowered as a lot of their physicians are in being empowered and taking care of them. So I want to ask you about some new tech, because I was doing some, I find this stuff interesting, because I don't do a lot of allergy in my practice, but as I prepare for various shows, I go, wow, as a general practitioner, I might see things on the fringe, but I'm like, oh, Dr. Mora, she's in the trenches. So I got to ask her some questions about being in the trenches so I can get a better understanding, but then people out there can get an understanding there. So I found some information here on clinical trials that are out there for food allergy therapies. And we know, again, right now there is no known cure for food allergies, but there are some studies that are going out there. So can you talk a little bit about like oral immunotherapy or sublingual immunotherapy? I had to look these up, everybody. I didn't know this stuff. Or even like skin patch therapy, the epicutaneous immunotherapy. What's the direction of some of the research going in right now? Where's it going?
So actually, Immune and DBB, so DBB is a French company, and Immune are bringing two actually great therapies for possible peanut allergy and milk allergy to the United States, and hope to be FDA approved by the end of this year, so hopefully in the market by beginning of 2019. And I call 2019 to be food allergy year, because I really think this is where finally some of the research is really starting there. So DBB, which is the French company, is bringing an epicutaneous, so it's going to be a little patch that kids or adults can wear on their arm. And it's basically no chance of anaphylaxis or anything else. It contains a little bit of peanut protein on it, and it basically is sending signals to your actual skin cells. The skin cells are transmitting actual signals to the brain, and then the brain to the gut to actually increase tolerance. So what the goal is what they saw at year one after wearing it, and they switch it every 24 hours. If they go swimming, they switch it. At 1 year, they saw a 25% decrease in skin test reactivity and blood testing. At year two, they saw a 35%. At year three, they saw a 50% reactivity, and they were able to eat actually a total of 11 times more peanut than at the beginning of the trial. So what that basically means is if someone were to have an allergic exposure to peanuts and accidentally eat something, a Reese's peanut butter cup, then they're not going to go into anaphylaxis.
Wow.
So that, to parents, to people, it's going to be life-changing.
Yeah, definitely. Game changer.
Game changer. And then the other thing is coming from Immune, which is basically a desensitization protocol where it's going to be peanut flour in capsules. They're going to be receiving an increasing dose coming through, and they basically mix it into their favorite food, cereal, it can be a pudding or anything else. And what they're doing is basically promoting tolerance. There were a little bit more actual side effects seen in the studies. For example, a little bit of indigestion in the gut because it's going through the gut and so forth. But again, it increased tolerance, and in case they were to have accidental exposure to peanut, they were not going into anaphylaxis.
Wow. And you're really talking about ways for people just to live normal lives. And we talk about
And not fear, yes.
being fearless, fulfilled, and healthy. Because again, it's food.
Absolutely. And we're going into Halloween, and they get all the candy, and they
who knows what's out there.
Absolutely.
Well, this is awesome. So I like that. I like how you coined it. 2019, the year of the food allergy. I'm going to follow up with you on that one for sure. I want to do this now. I want to switch things a little bit because what I've been doing on the show lately is I've been doing this myths versus facts thing. And this is the time to break down a lot of the falsehoods that are out there, just the bad information, the misinformation out there. So, Dr. Mora, here we go. Food allergies, speed round, yeah. Oh yeah, you're on the spot. It's food allergies. To Your Health with Dr. G, food allergies, myths versus facts. So I'm going to read a statement, and you're going to say myth versus or fact, and you can tell me, like in a couple sentences, why it's a myth or a fact. Here we go. The food allergy version of myths versus facts. Here we go. All right, number one. Food allergies are rare and often aren't serious.
False. Myth. So definitely, this is why Dr. G and I are here. We're promoting food allergy awareness, and we want to save and make it actually as known as to many people as possible.
It is serious. It's life-threatening, potentially. All right, here we go. Second statement. Here we go. Food labels make it easy to know what's safe for people with food allergies. Food labels, we don't want to talk about that.
I know, myth. We need better food labeling. So right now, the big 8 are currently labeled well, but when we go into, for example, sesame seed, which we didn't talk about, but it's the #1 growing food allergy currently in the United States. And here's my actual theory on why we have a sesame seed increase. Because we have a lot more in vitro going on in mommies to get pregnant. And guess what? Those hormone shots that they give each twice a week or 3 times a week are actually stored in sesame seed oil.
Wow. I did not know that. And I'm just like, wow. So that's a very interesting correlation between that. I don't think the lay public knows that.
No, I don't think so either.
It's like a hidden secret, but if we're seeing that exposure and that risk on the back end, we've got to do something about that.
Absolutely.
Here we go. Next statement, myth versus fact. Here we go. You can cook allergens out of food.
If it's, for example, an environmental allergen, so for example, apple, and an apple gives you itchy mouth, then you can put it in the microwave, the apple, for 10 seconds, and the pollen is degraded, but not the actual food.
Excellent. All right, here we go. You answered this already, but I'll just say it anyways. You can grow out of food allergies.
Yes, you can.
All right, that is a fact. All right, here we go. All right, here's a statement. You can be allergic to any food.
Correct, yes.
I agree, that is a fact. All right, here we go, and I think you knocked this one out of the park, but here we go. Benadryl can be helpful for anaphylaxis.
EpiPen, epinephrine. Please, first.
Yeah, I read a case about a physician whose daughter actually wound up dying from at a party or something, and the daughter wound up getting Benadryl at the site of an allergic reaction or a food allergy, and then epinephrine was delayed by about 30 minutes or something like that. But it's epinephrine. So
absolutely, that is the #1 thing that we can tell all our patients out there.
Nice. All right, here we go. The quote may contain warning labels. Just provide legal protection for companies. Those foods are fine for those with anaphylactic allergies.
No, false.
I love these questions because I'm like, oh, we're doing some underhand, we're doing some softballs here, but it's important to dispel this information. There's a lot of misinformation.
Absolutely. Like, big questions I always get on that is may contain peanuts or tree nuts or manufactured. in a plant that also processes peanuts or tree nuts. So manufactured in a plant that processes peanuts or tree nuts means that the building can be 4 buildings away, but legally they still have to put it on the actual label. So that means it's usually really safe, honestly. Studies have shown cockroach droppings are higher in number than any peanuts or tree nuts in that case.
Fair enough. I know we're going to use the word cockroach today, but there we go.
But may contain traces of peanuts or tree nuts. Be careful, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. Here we go. Next one. Here's a statement, probably from my parents. Here we go. I diagnosed my child's allergy so they don't eat X anymore. I don't know what I'm trying to say on that one.
Well, I think for a lot of people, they feel that they need, maybe the kid would get really bad eczema or something, and so the parent took it out of the actual foods, so that way they could feel better. Or classic story that you or I probably hear is, we took milk out because it caused all this phlegm, and really it's not an actual milk allergy. It's just they probably had a cold and then they drank milk, and of course it increased the actual mucus production.
And you say no, and then you say cause and effect. It's very easy to come to that conclusion.
Correct.
All right, here we go. Food allergies we dispelled this one, but here we go. I'm gonna say it anyways, just in case people didn't hear us. Food allergies mostly impact high-income Caucasian families.
Food allergy doesn't discriminate. Everyone's affected.
Excellent. We'll do one more food allergy, myth versus fact. Here we go. I was exposed to an allergen, but I'm fine. Maybe I'm not going to have a reaction.
False. So we can never predict what the second reaction is. The other thing patients should know is there's basically, once they've had a really hard reaction. For example, I had a patient who came to me and had a reaction to shellfish and then said, but I kept eating shellfish and then I didn't have any reactions during 4 weeks. And the reason she wasn't having any reaction because she was in that window period where her immune system had already exploded and given a reaction. So she hadn't built up enough immune response to mount an actual response against the food again. So it takes your body 4 to 6 weeks to rebuild and be able to mount another response.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, this has been awesome, by the way. This has been awesome talking with you and everything, Dr. Mora. But we got about 5 minutes left. So we're going to kind of wrap this up a little bit. But this has been just awesome. Just so happy that you're here. You and I have connected again, talking passionately about, and you got the passion for sure, about the importance of food allergies and food allergy awareness. So I want to do this. So at the end of, when we see patients in the office, when we wrap up our visits, we call it the assessment and plan. So, Dr. Mora, here's your assessment and plan. What are some take-home points for people that are listening to our show, watching us? Are going to share it. You guys got to share it. But people that are listening to us, what's the take-home points that you would say as it relates to food allergy awareness? Give us a couple take-home points.
So 1, food allergy doesn't discriminate. So everyone is at risk. 2, what is something that we can do to help to decrease our actual chance of having a childhood food allergy? The D's. So just reiterating. So 1 is basically vitamin D, get the sunlight. 2, dirt. So make sure that the child rolls around in dirt. Let the immune system work. 3, probiotics, which I didn't really touch upon, but it gives all that good bacteria back into the gut, and it's good for the whole family. So I'm a big proponent of good bacteria. 4, actual dermatitis or skin. Treat the skin. Make sure it's basically nicely lotioned up for a baby and everything else, because it will decrease the chance of food allergy as well too, because when the actual skin is open, food can touch the skin and create an immune response to it, so it can increase the actual risk of food allergy. So that's another one. Get a dog if you'd like, to decrease the risk of actual food allergy as well too. And then really the big take-home point that we are really stressing with Dr. G today is epinephrine early. Early intervention is key to preventing mortality or death. If you want to save someone, definitely you want to make sure that you use epinephrine. 4, raise awareness in your communities as well too. Get EpiPens to be available in church settings, in libraries, and schools. There's programs out there where schools can get free AviQs or epinephrine, so that way they can be part of the emergency kit for school. And we're going to try to get it on airplanes as well too, so that if kids or adults are in mid-air, then they that the staff is trained to actually give them as well too. So that's one thing we're lobbying for.
Excellent take-home points. And here's kind of my final thoughts. You know, eating is an intrinsic and an essential part of what we do and who we are. So the idea that your bodies can rebel violently, potentially, to everyday foods can be difficult to believe. But what we need to do is continue to have this conversation. And as we have this conversation, we can try to find practical solutions together. So I want to thank everybody for checking us out today. Again, Dr. Mora, oh my gosh, Dr. Juanita Mora, you guys need to check her out, for real. If you have any concerns, anything about allergies, food allergies or just allergies, just somebody who's super passionate, you guys got to check out Dr. Juanita Mora from the Chicago Allergy Center, www.thechicagoallergycenter.com. Next week on the show, we're going to be doing fresh approaches to athletic training. Why not get that pumping going and all that energy and exercise and healing and things like that. Again, my name is Dr. Mark Gomez, Dr. G. Check me out on my website, www.drmarkgomez.com. Peace out. Awesome.
Thank you.
Fist bump.
Oh my gosh,
Bam.
that was awesome.